I hope everyone is well, inshallah. Um, we haven't done a live stream on this channel for a while, but I'm really excited for today's stream because we have Brother Qaiser who's joining us. Brother Qaiser Ahmed Raja. Assalamu alaikum, bro. How are you?
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Well, alhamdulillah, absolutely fine. Thank you for having me on your show.
No, bro. May Allah bless you, bro. We've been intending on doing something together for a couple of months now.
Yeah.
But it's always been on my side that I haven't got back to you in time. So may Allah bless you for coming today. And inshallah, today will be a fruitful discussion. I haven't done anything on atheism recently. So this will be good, inshallah, to go back to that and just
Inshallah.
discuss that topic because, it's one of those things that's taking many forms these days. So it's important to discuss this topic, especially with Muslims as well, inshallah. But before we get into it, bro, I want to just introduce everyone to yourself, inshallah. So Brother Qaiser,
Sure.
mashallah, has his YouTube channel in Urdu, which is a very successful channel, mashallah, dealing specifically or fundamentally at least with the topic of atheism and Islam. And he does a phenomenal job in the Urdu language of deconstructing atheism and building a positive case for Islam, motivating Muslims, mashallah, that goes without saying. But also, one of the other things he specializes in is having, detailed, lengthy discussions with atheists on his live stream, really highlighting to people that, look, we're not just making claims, we have something to back it up with, and our position is very strong and challenging their position, which is very weak fundamentally. So, mashallah, Brother Qaiser, you've also launched an English channel as well recently, is that correct?
That's very true, yes. It's something which was pending. I was planning on doing this for some time, but again, one thing and then another thing, and it was being delayed, but alhamdulillah, it's now all up and running.
MashaAllah. And what is the focus there? Why don't you quickly tell us, inshallah, bro? So what are you focusing on in the English channel?
Well, my stance is rather simple. Us, the Muslims, we have been doing the job of defending ourselves for some time. And over a period of time, I have developed a particular distaste to this idea. That's what I do on my Urdu channel, and that's what I'll be doing on my English channel. Well, basically, the idea is that, look, don't expect me to explain myself to you because I simply refuse to subscribe to this intellectual imperialism that I have to justify my belief to you. Now, you don't like Islam, that's your right, that's absolutely fine. But if you think that my religion is primitive, if you think my culture is primitive than that of yours, then I am going to judge you with respect, not with any hostility. So the idea is that what I will be doing on my channel is that if you're an atheist and you think atheism is better than Islam, let's have a conversation. If you're a liberal and you think that the liberal values are better than the Islamic culture, well, let's have a conversation. Don't expect me to engage in a one-way traffic where you get to be the judge and the jury and the executioner, and I am having to defend every single thing and trying to appease you. By that, I'm not saying that the people who defend, they do appease, but what I'm saying is that the people, they defend the religion with all the honest attempt. They don't look at this attempt with the degree of honesty required. They just simply think that, look, we are the ones who are going to judge you and you have to defend yourself. Now, to that I say, no more. So it's going to be an equal footing. It's just going to be judgment versus judgment.
MashaAllah. And bro, that is a very refreshing take on the whole subject and the whole sort of debate between Muslims and atheists, because especially if you look at the sort of past, say, decade or so, the approach predominantly has been like the atheist comes to you, they posit a question, they ask for proof and evidence, and the Muslim tends to find themselves on the back foot, providing evidence. And like you said, it's almost a courtroom scenario where the atheist is judge and you are standing trying to defend yourself and you're giving the arguments, and it's all back foot. But something you mentioned, which I really want to explore first and foremost, is this idea of that we don't have to defend our religion. If anything, it's their worldview that cannot defend itself. So there is, if you like, this narrative that's been painted, and it's crumbling now, it's crumbling, but this narrative that was especially, bolstered by the likes of Dawkins and Harris and Dennett and all of these guys, initially at least, and then later by the sort of popular YouTubers that came around. This idea that, look, atheism is this very rational, intellectual position. It's the position for the modern man, the modern woman, the thinking man, the thinking woman, and religion is a thing of the past. And therefore now we will expose you religious people by asking you questions and highlighting that you can't prove God's existence. So it's always the Muslim, in our case, because we're talking about Islam predominantly, has been on the back foot, and the atheist has tried to posit themselves on the front foot. But why is it, I want to know from you, why is it that the atheist is not in a position to challenge us in that way?
Well, it's a simple thing. Look, when you have a philosophy, which atheism essentially is, then you simply cannot say that, look, my philosophy is good because I think you're wrong. No, you have to provide the truth value of it. You have to explain what is good about it. To simply assert that there is no God and stop worrying about things and there is no religion, well, it does not resolve any of the practical problems. You still have your neighbors that you live next door to. You still have responsibility towards the wider society. You still have to contribute in the taxation system and the education and health. You are still the stakeholder. Atheism does not give you any guidelines as to how to form a relationship with your neighbor, for example, the relationship with your family, the balance between the rational egoism and altruism. I mean, these are the fundamentally very important questions, because the quality of your life depends on what side of the scale you find yourself, on the rational egoistic side or on the altruistic side. Atheism doesn't resolve any of these questions. It doesn't even entertain them. So for the atheist, the only way they can remain cool is by saying that everything else is wrong. And that simply is not good enough. You have to come up with the answers. You have to come up with something which is philosophically tenable position. And that is why you must, I mean, you are in the dawah work for some time. You must have noticed that the atheists never talk about atheism. And this is the only intellectual group on this planet that doesn't do it. You'd expect a Jew to talk about Judaism because that's what he or she essentially believe in. You'd expect a Muslim to talk about Islam because that's what we believe in. Christians do the same thing. Whether you agree with us or you don't agree with us, that's another thing. But at least we are honest and open enough that we talk about what we believe in. Why atheists don't do it? Because there is nothing to talk about. It's a one-liner. There is no God. And that's it. But that cannot be it. So you have to come up with the ideas. We are going to ask you the question. So when you talk to me as an atheist, I'm going to ask you about whether it's a psychological state of atheist, of being an atheist, if that is what you assume. So, or is it just are you an epistemological atheist, or are you an ontological atheist? You have to give me the answer, because for you to be able to say that my religion is wrong, you have to be right. It cannot be one-way thing. Your religion is wrong, therefore I win. It's not going to happen anymore.
Subhanallah, and you're absolutely right. They don't like the questions being turned back on them, because they don't have fundamentally a position to defend. Like you said, it's a one-liner. There is no God. There is no creator. Well, I'm completely on the same wavelength with as you on this matter, because if you notice, past couple of years I've stopped providing or doing videos on arguments for God's existence, because I don't think they're in the position to be judged, right? Whatever you want to call it. Now some atheists take offense to calling them or their way as a worldview. Some would say it's just a lack of belief. They term it in many different ways, but whatever it is, they are making a positive claim. The claim is that there is no God or there are no gods. Now, as soon as you make that claim, that's a positive claim. Now, first and foremost, you have to therefore provide evidence for that claim. Well, why do you believe this to be true? Secondly, it also has implications. And you briefly touched upon some of the implications, that the atheist still has to remain within society and function as a social being. Whereas their perspective or worldview, which I prefer to refer to as a worldview, and we can discuss this further, but their perspective or their worldview cannot ground them socially to live in a functional way, ethically, whether it's from the perspective existentially, it can't ground them. Now, I specifically have focused in on the existential side of things, such as the meaning of life, which I believe to be one of the most fundamental questions any human has to address before they can function within society and live productively, at least. But they don't have this. They don't like these questions. What is the ultimate meaning of life on atheism? They don't like these questions. How do you account for objective moral values and truths? They don't like these questions. And it's important to ask these questions. So give us a bit more on this. Have your experience when you've spoken to atheists, when you've challenged them with these questions, how have they responded? What have you received? as answers?
Well, well, there has been a consistent decline in that regard. I started my live stream with the title "Convince Me on Atheism." So on purpose, I changed the standard rules of grammar. Instead of saying "convince me of atheism," I said "convince me on atheism," because "of" would have implied that it's not a thing that exists. It says in a concept, it's there that you can, everything else is wrong, therefore atheism as the last remaining position is right. But I said, no, convince me. I'm going to treat it as a thing, so convince me on it. It's what is good about it. So after 50 or so hours, we had one stream that was 7 hours long, another one 6.5 hours long, and another one 5 hours. So put together 50 plus hours. Initially, there were some very aggressive atheists tried all the usual stuff, your religion this, your religion that, and I would say, well, yeah, I get it, but this is not about me convincing you of my religion, but it's rather you convincing me of telling me what is so good about atheism. And there came a time when the Pakistani atheists and Indian atheists, they started inviting overseas atheists. So we had atheists from Canada and UK and here and there. It's the same thing. Essentially, it was the same thing. Now they don't turn up anymore because they understand that when you try to convince someone on atheism, you have to talk about atheism. You have to. It's not an easy thing. And now the same guys, I mean, it's not that they don't come anymore. They do, but now they call themselves seekers, or the skeptics, agnostics. So yeah, that's fair enough. By all means, call yourself whatever. But if you want to convince the world that the atheism is the best thing, then I'm very sorry to say you have to do better than this. So when I would ask them question, for example, that look, when you talk about economy, I can give you positive information that if we implement the Islamic economic system in the West, for example, interest-free economy, reduce the taxes, have the 2.5% of charity, that would put more and more people into the paying circle, and that would resolve the problem of poverty. And you can do that in any country, not just any Western country, any country in the world. That is solution there. Now you tell me the atheistic solution. Well, there isn't any. So that is how it unfolded. And after 50 or so hours, that pipeline is now dried up. Atheists don't come under the pretext of atheism. They come under the pretext of something else. And that has, alhamdulillah, worked. We had so many people who had actually left Islam because they were led in a very confusing manner. The inaccurate information, and they, outright lies about Islam and the misinterpretation of the hadith and the ayahs and so forth. But once those sort of discourses started to take place, alhamdulillah, many Muslims, or what they were ex-Muslims at the time, they came back to religion. And it's always very emotional when a young man comes back and says, well, now we understand. And now, alhamdulillah, I'm part of the Iman Union. We do 3 to 5 streams a week in Urdu and Hindi language, occasionally in Punjabi. So alhamdulillah, that fitna is no longer there. So now I want to engage with the wider audience of the West and hopefully do the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And brothers and sisters watching right now, I definitely recommend you going over to Brother Qaiser's channel, and I'll link in the description box below as well, and subscribing to his English channel specifically, because, and I'm not just saying that, I want to sort of share one of the, if you like, the USPs of your channel or your approach, which is quite novel and it's different from what's already out there, is that you, as the brothers and sisters are watching you right now, they know you're a very relaxed, calm person. You don't get loud, you don't get aggressive or anything like this. And yet still what you're doing is you are now spending hours on live streams highlighting and demonstrating what the Muslims have been saying all along about atheism, practically. Like, okay, we're inviting you, come on, spend the hour, spend 2 hours, talk to us, and let's see if what you're saying is true. And you're highlighting that in a very practical, pragmatic way. So that's something very unique. And if anyone that's interested in really observing this taking place, then definitely go on over and subscribe to the brother's channel, inshallah. And also, bro, moving on from that, I do want to also touch upon we were on a live together a little while ago with Mufti Saab a few months ago, and one of the guys, I think he was an atheist, and he came on, he became very aggressive, right? He was calling you out and all of this type of stuff, and And this is what ends up happening, and I think one of the other things that brothers and sisters can learn from you is that, brothers and sisters, you don't have to be aggressive in your dawah,
Mm.
at least not verbally or physically. There's no need for this, right? You can
Yeah.
calmly articulate your position, and if anything, that's going to be far more impactful for people as well, for the Muslims and non-Muslims, because they'll see from a non-Muslim standpoint, they'll see a Muslim carrying themselves in a good manner, articulating themselves well, and yet getting the point across. And from the Muslims' perspective, it's something we need to adopt. Especially young brothers and sisters, bro. One thing you realize is that they're zealous, mashallah. They're very energetic, but sometimes they can't control or contain their emotions, and they get very aggressive and agitated. So before we carry on the atheism topic, anything you want to sort of touch upon this as far as the characteristics of dawah are concerned?
Well, absolutely. I think you've pointed out something very important here, because mostly what happens is the paradigm of this game consists of angry, aggressive, emotional Muslims versus very provocative atheists or Islamophobes. Could be from any other system of belief as well. And atheism is a system of belief, despite the fact that it's one-liner, but it still does have certain things, like humanism, this, that, and the other. And the thing is that when you become angry and aggressive and emotional, then you miss the target. Because we have a term in cricket, it's an expression, basically coaching expression. It says, play the ball, don't play the man, which means that if you're a batsman and if you happen to be facing someone like I'm not sure if you are familiar with the cricketing personalities or not, but say, for example, Brett Lee or Shoaib Akhtar or someone fast like that. I say, don't play the man. Don't think who is bowling. Focus on the ball itself. If it's a bad ball, dispatch it. That's what you got to do. Debates are exactly the same thing. Don't be in the awe of your own lack of knowledge or in the awe of somebody else's excess amount of knowledge. No, just play the ball. Look at the argument. What do they have to present? Don't get drawn into the emotions. If they say something personal to you, it's fine, right? It's not a compulsion that you have to be out there. It's a conscious choice based on free will. You decided to be there. I decided to be there. I can't be thin-skinned anymore, right? That's what their game is. That's what they want to do. All you have to do is know your strength, know their weakness, not with any ill intent. It's the exchange of ideas, essentially. Your knowledge is your aggression. I don't say that you use it as a weapon, because at the end of the day, we are not there to hurt people emotionally. We're not there to shut someone up. We're not there to debunk someone. We are there to let people know that, look, this is what Islam is. You think it's wrong. That may well be the case, but we can discuss it. At any stage, however, if you think that you have this superiority complex, that you think that I somehow happen to be inferior than whatever you believe in, well, I am going to call that out. I am, in that case, don't expect any mercy from me. Again, no violence. It's a simple thing that I want to make sure that I do things the way I should.
Sorry, Brother Qaiser, I'm breaking up a bit. I don't know if it's on my side or it's your side. So can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry, I just lost a bit of signal, so hopefully it's gonna, your videos, we've lost your video.
Can you see me now?
It's back now. Yeah, I can see you now, inshallah.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know, I think it's probably my side, I'm getting some bad signal. But anyway, please continue, inshallah.
So the idea is to know your strength. Your knowledge is your strength. Read philosophy. And one thing that I say that, look, it's very important for you to know your religion, of course it is. But when you say that if you don't do this, you will never go to Jannah, well, that statement is as meaningful as it can be for a Muslim or a believer, or it could be as meaningless as it could be for an atheist. So the point we are making is, you know your religion is the true religion, but the people you are talking to, they don't know it. So if you want to take the battle to their camp, then you have to know what they stand for or what they don't stand for, right? For example, in my case, when somebody says, aggressive atheist comes and says that religion creates violence. And say, yes, but the data shows us that somewhere between 40 and 259 million, so somewhere between 40 million and 259 million people have been killed by atheists.
Mm.
How do we make sense of that? I don't need to shout at anyone. I don't need to be aggressive. I just need to put this fact out, and I have to have the reference of it, which I do, and then let them explain themselves. Oh no, we don't do it in the name of atheism. Yes, of course you don't do it in the name of atheism, but would that make any difference to the dead person? Imagine if you, in one of your dreams, if you get to meet a person who was killed by atheists, communists, and you tell that guy that, by the way, you were killed by those people, but they didn't kill you in the name of atheism. Would you expect that person to say, "Oh, I feel better now"?
Yeah.
No. When I make these arguments, I don't need to be shouting at someone.
Mm.
Keep yourself calm, rely on your knowledge, rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, put it out there. That's all what it takes. That's it.
Absolutely, bro, and brilliant. And I think we can move on to the other point here, which is, the implications. I think is very important to highlight to people that, as soon as you make the claim that there is no God and you adopt, call it atheism or call it whatever you want. There's many people out there today that don't believe in God or a creator, and vehemently speak out against the idea of God, but they won't call themselves atheists today, right? So they're moving away from that sort of hard label, if you like. But nevertheless, the implications are still there, because even if you refer to, like you mentioned, communism, you refer to communism as an example of atheism being implemented on a state level. They will say, no, it wasn't in the name of atheism, right? But the point is that the fundamental belief was there, which was the denial of a higher power, a creator that created the world with meaning. Now, you remove that on a state level, well, what ends up happening? It's a free-for-all. You make your own rules, you do what you believe is right. There is no objective morality, there is no ultimate meaning to life. So that those implications are gonna lead to some disastrous outcomes, which they did historically. So or even on an individual level, people that call themselves atheists, they fail to realize the implications. So maybe if we can touch upon these implications a bit, bro. Highlight to us what are the fundamental real life implications you find with someone that's thinking about or is already following this label or this idea that there is no God, there is no creator.
Well, that is the very core of the issue, because if you have a moral code and you abide by that code, what happens is you have a sense of internal regulation as to what you can and cannot do. But if you remove that from yourself, then everything is fine. Then there is absolutely no reason for you to be good. And we do become charitable at times. For example, when we say that, all the killings at the hands of the socialists or the atheists, that was not done in the name of atheism. But how is that not in the name of atheism, given the fact that the person that the most important figure in the entire ideology, Karl Marx, actually starts saying that the atheism and communism start at the same point, same outset, same onset, and this is how they go hand in hand. How do we make sense of nearly 50,000 churches being blown in Russia alone? How do we make sense of Comrade Khrushchev saying that very soon I will show the world the last remaining Christian, not capitalist, not any other person who believes in a different economic system, but a person who believes in a particular religion? And Khrushchev was a person who was there for communism, was there for atheism. And it's simply, the only argument perhaps you can come up with is that, look, those were the old days. But again, what difference would that make? People who were killed in the old days were still the people who were killed in the old days. That does not change the fact. And if you look at the modern atheists, look at people, people like Sam Harris, for example, if he does not have any problem with implying that the certain propositions, and this is the gist of from his book, I believe it's End of Faith, that some propositions are so dangerous that it's justified to even kill people just for believing in them. So what he's saying is that a certain idea, certain propositions are so dangerous that if people believe in them, you can kill them. And then he goes on to say that we will continue to spill blood in what is essentially a war of ideas. So it is okay for Sam Harris, it is okay for late Christopher Hitchens, for example, to say that the right now 102nd Battalion, I believe he mentioned, is what is between them and the secular. So he was referring to the war of war on Iraq. That this is what the British military is doing there, and all the other NATO, not just mentioning a particular country. And later we know that that war was not just war. And if it isn't a just war, well, what is it then? What we're saying is, whatever label we give it to, a war of extremism and so forth, the modern atheists are promoting it. They are standing behind the violence. They still are doing it. And it's not, so far as the implications are concerned, you can draw certain implications, but these are better than just getting the information as to what can be implied from it or derived from it. This is the direct evidence that the world order, which essentially what the powerful Western countries want to create. By that, I don't mean the people of the West are part of it. Of course, they resist. Of course, they have their own conscience. I am talking about the people in the government and people in power. We have our modern atheists standing by them, telling them that they are doing the right thing. So no one has to be a rocket scientist to understand that atheism and violence, historically or in the contemporary world, they go hand to hand. There is no denial. It's all part of the public record.
SubhanAllah, you put it very, very well. And it reminds me of a quote by Alistair McGrath where he said, atheism and modernity are two sides of the same coin. So you can see, and one of the reasons, because one wonders, well, why, if this worldview, this ideology, whatever you want to call it, atheism, if it's so fundamentally weak philosophically, then why has it been around, and why did it pick up in popularity for a while, and so on and so forth? Well, I believe the answer lies in the fact that it goes hand in hand with this materialistic, this capitalist system. They fundamentally support each other, because the materialist narrative is, well, it's all about the goal of life. The purpose of life is to make as much as you can, have as many things as you can in this world, and then you die. Well, what does atheism say? There is no God, the YOLO mentality. You only live once, you only have this life, so make the most of it. So these ideologies go hand in hand. Even Marx, you referred to him earlier, when he referred to religion being the opium, or the opium of the masses. Fundamentally, he one of the reasons he said this was because he recognized that religion was a barrier to his philosophy, because the religious mindset was that if it had less or little, it was content. There was this. He couldn't create the motivation he needed within people to align themselves with his narrative, the religious people at least, because they had this system, this belief, which allowed them to be content with little or less. So he really hated the idea of religion, and it was a problem for him and his philosophy and his ideology. And you see this throughout history with different figures, attacking religion because religion was a barrier to their particular perspective. Now, even today, bro, you see the same thing. Most atheists on campus, for example, and maybe you can tell us in the Pakistani context as well, on campus you find atheists. They're not atheists because they have strong grounding for their views. They are atheists because it justifies their desires, it justifies their materialism. So it has utility for them, and that's pretty much it. So is it the same case in Pakistan as well, on campus, or different?
Oh no, Pakistan is much different in that regard. Pakistan happens to be one of the countries that is it receives out-of-date products, right? Be it if Toyota, for example, launches its Yaris car, it's going to be much more advanced in the rest of the world. In the same year, when it comes to Pakistan, it's going to be at least a generation old. Same thing goes with Honda. Same thing goes for all the other products. It's always at least a generation out of date. Atheism is no different. The type of atheism we have received in Pakistan, people of the West don't talk about that type of atheism anymore. Right? In Pakistan, the atheism revolves around two things. Personal resentment. Right? For example, we have seen cases, I wanted to marry a certain man, but I could not, and I prayed and Allah refused my prayer. Therefore, I conclude there is no Allah, and there you go, I'm an atheist. So, wow, that's deep.
SubhanAllah. It just shows
And
the lack of knowledge that the
exactly,
core concepts and ideas Muslims have as well, isn't it? SubhanAllah.
exactly. And the second is it does have a philosophical connotation to it, which is the problem of evil. Why there is so much evil. It's not brother.
Yeah, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I just lost you for a second.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry about it. So, uh, I believe I was saying that
Problem of
there
evil.
is the problem of evil. Not that people understand it in any meaningful way, but it's more of a device to give them some sort of justification against the religion. So what happens is they want to live that materialistic life. They want, in our universities in Pakistan at the moment, it's a lot is happening. Drugs, culture, and the open music and late night classes in which there isn't really much of study, but all the extracurricular activities take place.
Mm.
And people, young, excited minds, they love to be part of all that. But then they experience a moral dilemma. On one side, they have religion. On the other side, they have this excitement. So what do? Some of them experience that and they get out of it because they see there is not much depth into it, and they come out of it. Some of them want to go deeper, further, and farther. But the religion is still there. So they need some kind of device that they can use to say that I need to get out of the religion. So, I mean, if the religion is stopping you, how can you discredit the religion? That's where the problem of evil comes in. That's where the man-made evil comes in. That's where the children born with disability, for example, comes in. That's where the floods come in, and so forth. So it's not that they actually have a philosophical problem with it, but it's something to justify.
Yeah.
How do I say no to religion? And they find these things and say, yeah, if all this exists, then it should mean that the religion is not true. Now, these are just two problems, right? It's the
Yeah.
personal resentments and the problem of evil. And when we deal with these problems, address them, ask meaningful questions, normally there aren't any answers apart from and you're right in a way that when you want to live that life which revolves around your own self, and it does not have any deeper meaning at all, then how do you make sense of what you do? And that's where you concede essentialism and you jump to the existentialism, and you're trying to find your own meaning without even knowing. So problem with existentialism is not that it's always flawed. The problem is that you take a deeper dive. You ask yourself what sort of life purpose you have. But the very fact that by that time you have conceded essentialism, which means that you also conceded metaphysics. And the idea of having the deeper self-exploration without metaphysics is just like trying to climb Mount Everest with flip-flops, without proper kit.
That's a brilliant analogy, subhanAllah. Absolutely.
So that's how they find themselves in that conundrum. And because there are no answers, so the only way by which they can unleash this built-up frustration is by name-calling, abusive language, disrespecting holy personalities, blasphemy, and so forth. And that is essentially where the Pakistani atheism, or the state of Pakistani atheism, is.
And there's a very deep psychology there as well. That, again, not much is spoken about this, but like the point you mentioned earlier, I came to this exact same realization. It's this cognitive dissonance within we don't like to be in this state of dissonance as human beings, right? We need that cognitive stability. And what the young Muslims find themselves in is that on one side they face their desires, which are raging, and they're in that environment which doesn't help, and on the other side they have their religion now, and they're not really well informed about their religion. So they may be able to deal with this for so long until they have to make a decision, and they think from their perspective, or their ignorant perspective, that the easiest thing to do is to give up on the religion and to reject that and carry on with the desires. And to do this they need a justification, which you highlighted. The problem of evil is a very common one, that they use as justification to push them away from their religion now. And then in the long term, they have to continuously attack religion just to continue to keep themselves in that space where they feel comfortable and safe. And you
Yeah.
see this amongst atheists. They'll get into their circles and then they will discuss these things and make each other feel good and pat themselves on the back. And, then they're good for another couple of weeks until they start going through. Because at the end of the day, Allah tells us in the Quran that, don't be like those who forgot Allah and therefore Allah made them forget themselves. They are the ones that are the true transgressors. And this is a very powerful ayah of the Quran. I think Iqbal himself used this as one of the fundamental bedrocks for his philosophy of Khudi. This idea that for the human to truly know themselves, to be in a state of balance, they need to know their creator. Now, when you turn away from God, you're going to be in a state of imbalance. And humanity generally found themselves in this state. That's why the existentialist philosophers became popular, because, especially after World War II, there was this confusion, there was this feeling of being lost. People needed to know, in the absence of God, where to go. And the existentialists, on one level, provided a solution, although it was a superficial one. And there are many flaws to their perspectives as well. But nevertheless, they provided a plug, if you like, a temporary plug, like a filling, which eventually comes out. And then you need to go get a bigger filling because it does more damage in the long run. So, and it's no different today, bro. I mean, obviously I titled this Atheism Going Forward. So I think we've done a decent job in sort of touching upon some of the psychology and the fundamental implications of atheism up until this point. But going forward now, obviously, like you said, in Pakistan, things are maybe a decade behind at the moment. So we don't see the same atheism there as we see here today. But in the West, you see new flavors of godlessness today. So they won't use the label atheist, but they will do a mix, a biryani of a bit of this same fundamental belief there is no God, with some sort of new age spirituality, so they would start there, and there's really weird and funky things going on today, and I'm sure you're aware of all of those things. How would you address, let's start with this, how would you address a ex-Muslim or a non-Muslim who has lived the life of fulfilling their desires and having fun and enjoying themselves? They've gotten to the point now where they recognize something is still missing. I'm not satisfied, I'm not happy. Because the dopamine, it's like they do a drug the first time, they get a huge dopamine spike, and they ever for after chasing that same rush, which they're never going to get. And then they do more and more and more until it kills them. So they've got to a point, they're not dead yet. They haven't ruined themselves completely, but they're at the point where they realize this isn't fulfilling me. This isn't doing it. What would you say to such a person? How would you highlight to them that this godlessness is flawed and Islam is the way, if you're willing to at least sit and think about it?
In philosophy, we say that if you find the process of something complicated, then you look at the result. Now, you might find it very complicated for a person to change one set of belief, for example, from atheism to religion or from religion to atheism. It is quite complicated. It is a paradigm shift, granted. But for any person in the stage that you just mentioned would want to come back to Islam, or is even pondering the question as to whether or not he or she should come back to Islam because there is something missing, just look at the result. Just look at the result of what happens in the godless societies and what is happening in the societies where there used to be a practical belief in God. So by that, I don't mean any of the current Islamic countries, because that's a different type of fight we have to fight, that we need to have Sharia in Islamic countries. At the moment, we don't. So what I'm referring to is maybe 700 years ago or 800 years ago, something that we could see, that there were amazing polymaths who would actually read the khutbah of Jummah and were philosophers and were scientists at the same time. And there were amazing people they were. So that sort of time, if you look at how the humanity flourished, versus if you look at the current system, what is happening in the godless societies, where we have more and more gadgets coming through, but less and less human beings being produced. Maslow could be very helpful for atheists to understand why atheism is so flawed. That in his the hierarchy of needs, he came up with this rather very materialistic set of ideas that you need to have your certain needs fulfilled before you can self-actualize. And those needs include the love and affection and food and shelter and the psychological needs and so on and so forth. So once everything is given to you, you will self-actualize. Now, this is a standard thing which is being taught at the universities and everything, other academic institutes as well. Later in his life, he also came up with another step in his in his structure. He added self-transcendence, that once you've become self-actualized, then you go into in his pyramid, you go for self-transcendence. You transcend your existence, your existing self, and then you go and do other things, amazing things that you can only, go above and beyond. But that hasn't happened. Gellard probably pointed out in a brilliant way, and he questioned Maslow, that if the self-actualization requires everything that Maslow had stated, well, that's pretty much what people in the West get. I mean, there should not be any societal problems in the West, but we see the growing level of stress among children, among adults. We see 40% of marriages, they actually collapse. We see an entire generation of people growing up without knowing who their biological fathers are. We see suicide tendencies going up and up. We see the happiness index countries like Finland and so forth, that they're very happy. But we also see that those countries also top the chart of the countries where people commit most suicides. Now, it's fairly close. Why is this all happening? If Maslow were right, this is pretty standard in the West. In the West, you don't have the problems that the rest of the world faces, but still there is no happiness. And the answer, I suppose, lies in what Maslow thought would result in the self-transcendence. Well, that did not happen. He thought that once you have self-actualized, you have maximized your internal values and the talent and everything else, then you will go to a different realm. But that hasn't happened. If everything is given to you, one has to ask a question. If something is still missing, forget the self-transcendence side, even the self-actualization bit. If you haven't even gotten that far, there has to be something fundamentally wrong there. And from what we understand is what is wrong is that the whole idea of being self-centered and wanting things before you can contribute is wrong. You need to give away before so that you can get it back. Right? As the popular saying is that whatever you want, start giving it and you'll start getting it back. That's how it goes, be it money, respect, anything else. That takes us to a different question. Why would you want to give something away? And the answer is because altruism, because the sense of responsibility that you subscribe to, a wider responsibility towards the society, and that cannot happen if you live a self-centered life. Then you have to accept that there is a higher being that was given us the system, that we subscribe to that system, and that's why we do it. And that takes you back to the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, where you get that inner satisfaction, you get all that. The entire model of Maslow fails despite the fact everything that Maslow wants people to have, people have. But still, something is missing purely because it's all about being self-centered. Change that. Path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you'll start to get your own. Now, I've taken too much of your time on this answer. I'll just say one last thing.
No, please carry on, bro. Carry on, inshallah.
Thank you. It's one of my sayings that if you commit corruption in the system of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the least amount of punishment you will get is that you will lose your sense of peace and tranquility inside. That is the least amount of punishment, because the system of God is based on justice. When you commit corruption into it, you cause injustice to it. That includes belief in God. That includes taking the wealth of orphans, for example. That is causing unnecessary harm to your neighbor, for example, as something as small as on purpose parking your car in front of his front door just to cause a little inconvenience.
Unfortunately, Muslims do that a lot during Jummah as well, which is just another problem in and of itself.
Exactly. So you lose that sense of peace and tranquility, and that is the lowest amount of punishment, and then it only goes up from there. So this is what I would say to those people.
Yeah, brilliantly put, bro. You spoke about the balance, the mizan, and Allah mentions this in the Quran as well. And it's about establishing that, I guess, first and foremost within the individual self. And the human cannot be balanced until all aspects of its being are catered for and provided for. Now, the modern Western secular world does a good job of the physical aspect of the human being. Everyone's on a good diet, everyone's exercising, everyone's taking care of their body, everyone's doing yoga, all of these things. But people have lost the understanding of the reality that there is a metaphysical, there is a spiritual side that needs to be catered for as well. And Nietzsche, for example, when in the Madman, when he talks about the parable where the madman comes and he announces someone's killed God, and the people are looking at him in a strange way, and then he realizes they're not ready for this, and then he highlights that it's like the earth being taken out of orbit of the sun. Where is up, where is down, where are people going? He highlighted the chaos which was to ensue because of this. And
Yeah.
that's what we find in the world today, like you mentioned, from a technological standpoint, you know maybe an economic to a degree. People are doing better than they've ever done historically speaking, but yet from an ethical standpoint, from an existential standpoint, they are failing miserably, right? And that normally, historically speaking, was the reason for the collapse of civilizations, when they would ethically degrade. So it happened in the Muslim world as well. When we turned away from the tradition, when we turned away from the Quran, when we turned away from Allah, the Muslim world crumbled. It collapsed. That was one of the fundamental reasons. So Islam provides that solution, and I guess it's cosmology as well. Cosmology meaning, how do you understand reality in the world? Now, from a godless secular perspective, what is it? You're born. It's one cosmic accident. It's all one big accident, and you die. And while you're here, you just try to do the best you can. And what that means for most people is have as much fun as you can, enjoy yourself. So it falls back on the desires of the human being. And the world that we live in is designed to exploit those desires anyway. So you're just a cog in the system, essentially. And that's a very unfulfilling lifestyle. And people are realizing this and they're waking up. It doesn't fulfill you. Islam provides, and I would say that Islam is probably the most comprehensive cosmology. You can take any other religion, they will fail somewhere. Okay, another religion may make an account for the meaning of life, but it won't be able to explain why there's suffering in the world. They may fail somewhere else, but Islam is very comprehensive. It ties everything together perfectly in a beautiful way. And maybe we can touch upon that, as we, come to a close. I guess for today, I want to carry this discussion on, maybe zoom into more specific areas later on in future episodes. But how does Islam provide a comprehensive solution? I guess let's narrow it down from an existential and a moral perspective. One thing you've mentioned already, which is that we begin with Allah. So the human's grounded immediately. The human knows their true identity, that we are created beings and we were created for a purpose. That's a good starting point for human beings, right? So from that, you have a good springboard. Now you can function properly within society. But maybe continue on that trajectory and give us more on how Islam comprehensively provides an account for man life and the universe, and how it grounds you.
I think the thing with Islam is that because it is not man-made, therefore it does not place its focus on some people, like capitalism does. It focuses on just wealthy individuals. Of course, it creates a pathway for anyone to become wealthy. That's one thing. But still, once you are wealthy, then the type of benefits you receive are not going to be. They are going to be exclusive to you and to your ilk. In that regard, general public will have absolutely nothing to do with it. For example, the American economy has grown more than double since 1980s. But if you adjust for inflation, the average wage is still there. It has hit the stage of stagnation, and one has to wonder, if the industrialists are making that much money, why people who work for those industrialists are not being given the benefit, why the benefit has not been extended to them. And the simple answer is because they don't matter. Industrialist does, capitalist does. Islam doesn't operate like that. It has all the humanity in its view. It wants to create a society which is based on justice. It's not based on the people with power having more of benefit, having more of resources. And that is why Islam encompasses everything. On one side, it allows you and enables you, it encourages you to do the science, explore, look around you, create medicine, create benefits for people, all those are amazing things. But at the same time, it gives you the guidelines on what the modesty is. How do you preserve your cultural values? What is the sense of justice? How do you need to install justice in the society? And the very fact that it is not a relative religion, it's that the guidelines come from an absolute executioner, absolute creator. Therefore, I don't have the right to change anything. Right? You don't have the right to change anything. It does have its principles that we abide by, and within those principles, of course, and the guidelines, of course, we can have different senses. For example, you can have a different sense of fashion than that of mine, but it does give the guidelines that your dress should not make you look even more dressless as skin fit jeans, right? So it should be the principle is there. Within that, of course, you're free to do whatever you want to, and I'm free to do whatever I want to do, so long as we keep that principle. So be it the sense of fashion, be it the family values, something which is, there are two predominant approaches towards life in the world: the collectivism and individualism. Us, the human beings, we are the group species, right? We create communities. We love to live in large communities and make rules and regulations, which means that we are the collectivist people. Islam, in absolute terms, encourages collectivism. Islam does not give the idea of individualism where people can make things relative to them, be it morality or anything else, because that is exactly where you lose the fabric of the society. And then with the time, it deteriorates further. And there comes a time where the Western society has reached at the moment, and the next 70 to 80 years are looking pretty bleak as well. So when it comes to Islam, it does not matter what aspect of life you have. You will always have the coverage that you need because it is made for you. It is not made for the rich exclusive. It is not made for powerful for politicians. It is not made for army generals. It is made for the entire humanity, and this is what sets it apart than any other man-made system.
Mashallah. And this I guess leads me to another question, where obviously we can appreciate and understand how nihilism is an inescapable end for someone that denies God or a creator. But what you find today, there's a new trend almost. I refer to as Muslim nihilism, where you have Muslims who still call themselves Muslim, but they live and act and behave and feel as if they're nihilists. They don't know what the meaning of life is. They believe there is no ultimate meaning to life. Now, obviously, some of this is due to a lack of knowledge, but I guess, and then on top of this, you find some young Muslim brothers and sisters turning towards or wanting to associate with the woke, and all of these new types of
Mm.
perspectives that are coming about. And it makes me wonder, it makes me think that we have such a comprehensive and perfect system, a way of life where our creator has first told us who we are, why we were created. Those fundamental tenets are laid down very clearly. And then on
Yeah.
top of that, as you mentioned, given us clear guidelines, and they're not, and there's frameworks, and there's some flexibility within that framework as well, where each individual can express the individuality.
Yeah.
But and it's such a perfect system, like Allah says, it's guidance for humanity, it's guidance for our lives, so that we're successful here and we're successful in the hereafter. Yet we find so many Muslims, young Muslim brothers and sisters, that just don't seem to get it and have lost their way. Now, why do you think this is? What do you think the fundamental reasons behind this are, and what is the solution to this?
I think one of the major problems is that for us, religion has always been a package of certain rituals, be it Salah or once a year celebrating month of Ramadan, couple of Eids, and that's it. I mean, it never became an implied part of our life. It was always there, but that's that. Unfortunately, an entire generation of people in the West, in the UK, for example, they worked very hard on building assets, building huge houses in Pakistan, making sure that the mortgage is paid off before they hit the age of 45 or whatever. Did long taxi hours.
Mm.
I did taxi myself, so I guess I can make that joke. You know, cost of that came in the form of the children not being educated enough on Islam. So they became victim of identity crisis. On one side, they would go to school and they'd see their peers doing all sort of things, talking about movies, talking about music, talking about all the other indulgence. And then they would come back home and they will see an Islamic atmosphere, not necessarily that they are being taught expressly about what Islam is, but Islamic enough that they have to pray and they have to do all the other daily routines, and that's that. There was never a greater spiritual connection that if I am standing on a cash point, for example, ATM, and there's a person ahead of me, and I am standing in a certain angle that I can actually see his PIN code as he is keying it in, and I look away, and I do so because my religion requires me. Now, we have never, almost never, raised our children with this type of spiritual connection with God. By that, I'm not saying that the Muslim children would not look away. Of course they would, but they would do it because this is what they learned in the society. It's not that they're doing it for a higher being that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires us. You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, everything that you do, if you do it for my raza, if you do it for me, that is how you practice the religion. And that is how I become happy with you, because you are doing things for me. That's a huge part of our child development that has gone missing, because somehow we thought that if we raise our children on autopilot mode, they will be fine. No, they will not be fine. They should have realized that they have gone to a different country where children don't get to hear azan 5 times a day, where children don't get to go into the Islamic gatherings. Then this is the result that people expect. On one side, children are still afraid enough that maybe there is God. So I want to keep calling myself a Muslim, but then I do all the other things here, hoping that if God is there, I will be forgiven. That, by the way, is a very good thing. If any young child in the West is living a life which is completely a non-halal life with the view that I might be forgiven, there's a lot of hope. For that kid, there is a lot of hope. But for someone who says that, look, it's my life, I'm gonna decide the way I want to live it, well, that's where the problems are. So this is what my understanding, my study is, that this is why the children have gone to. I mean, I remember when I was there in university, and we had the student annual ball, where there was a lot of drinks and dance and all that was going on. And of course, they had the different section of drinks for us, the Muslims, non-alcoholic section, thanks to them, we enjoyed non-alcoholic drinks and all that. But we had Muslim sisters there, proper hijabi sisters. They had a different, they sort of a makeshift section. They made one within the hall, and they were doing all the dance and all the moves and everything else was there. It's just that it was all exclusive for ladies with hijab. So halal dance, I guess. That is the epitome of identity crisis. No, you don't do that. But if I put the hijab on and do it with another girl, that makes it okay. No, it doesn't. It doesn't. But this is the manifestation of this identity crisis. So I think the solution is take the ownership of religion. It's not just a thing which is there and you do it, every Friday. It isn't like Christianity. It isn't.
Yeah. And it's
I think famously said that night before you go to do whatever, let's not mention that on your channel, and then next Sunday go to church and all that. That's not Islam. Every second of it means something, and we just need to connect with every second of it.
SubhanAllah. And the powers that may be have done a good job of really giving religion a specific definition in the West, which is it's something you practice behind your closed doors, you maybe do on a Sunday, and that's that pretty much. And this is why I personally have an issue, especially in the dawah, with referring to Islam as a religion without defining what we mean. Because the notion that comes in someone's mind is, it's something you do and it's maybe once a week, and then you get on with your secular life. But the reality is that Islam is a whole way of life. and it's comprehensive, and it fits like a glove. It fits your nature, your fitra like a glove. It's perfect, and I guess all of these subtle small things have obviously contributed to where we find ourselves today. And again, there's so much here to talk about, bro, inshallah. So we definitely need to do a part two where we can sort of delve into specifics, inshallah. But before we sort of wrap up, inshallah, I want you to sort of share with everyone watching and everyone that does watch after it goes up, where could they find your channels, your English channel, your Urdu channel? Please send me the links to those, so I'll add them into the description, inshallah. But just say it out as well if you can, inshallah, for anyone that's live right now and wants to go subscribe quickly because they may forget to do so later on, inshallah.
Yeah, sure, inshallah, Aziz. It's quite simple. You can see my name at the moment. It's Qaiser Ahmed Raja. Well, that's what the Urdu channel is. And English one is same, except for the middle name only is my middle initial, so Qaiser A Raja. Apart from that, it's exactly the same. You'll see my pic on both of these. And of course, I will send you the links as well.
Jazakallah, bro. And like I said, brothers and sisters, you're gonna get something novel. Because I was watching the brothers' stuff for a while, mashallah, and it's brilliant because it like he goes through may Allah reward him and accept from him. He goes through the effort of spending those hours talking to these individuals, because what I would do, for example, on my channel is, okay, I may make a video on a topic 2-3 minutes long, 5 minutes long, at best maybe a live stream which is an hour long, right, talking about a topic. But what you do is you then spend hours on a live stream with inviting these individuals, now showing people practically, okay, we say this, but look, this is the reality as well. They don't have foundations for their worldview. They can't justify it. They're in a very terrible position, and here's what makes Islam so strong. So it's a very beautiful practical demonstration of what we all say, subhanAllah. So definitely check that out, inshallah, brothers and sisters. Brother Qaiser, I'm going to have to take your leave now, inshallah. Jazakallah khair for coming on. May Allah bless you. May Allah accept from you. And there's definitely going to be, what we'll do is we'll maybe do parts on specific topics, inshallah, like nihilism, atheism, what an agnostic is, Islam, certain aspects of Islam. I think that would be very helpful and beneficial. It'd be really good to get your insights, your unique insights on these topics as well, inshallah. Anything else you want to sort of say before we wrap up?
Well, thank you. I really appreciate the fact that you invited me here. Thank you for having me. And thanks to your audience. I really appreciate, it's not only easy to listen to me, what people call passive aggressive, but very boring guy.
But it's good. People need to get used to this. Brothers and sisters, you need to get this is how it should be. We've become used to and accustomed to this very sort of loud, craziness online, and the algorithm obviously pushes this, but we need to fight against this. Because I always say to the audience, the followers, because it takes two hands to clap, as we know the saying goes, right? So you can blame the content creators all we like. They're putting out content like this, they're putting out all of this extravagant refutations, etc. But we are the ones that are watching that stuff, which is, again, there's two sides to the coin, brothers and sisters. So we need to appreciate, we need to watch, we need to follow, the people that are, inshallah, trying to do it in the right way, and Brother Qaiser, mashallah, for me at least personally, is a brilliant example of this. May Allah accept from him and bless him. And yeah, go and subscribe and watch this video, share this video, and inshallah we'll definitely do a part two, bro, inshallah, very, very soon. May Allah bless you, bro. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Assalamu
wa
alaikum.
barakatuh.